A few thoughts now on the states versus Obama. 4 state attorneys general are now suing the Obama administration to stop the transfer of Internet oversight, saying the move threatens online freedom of expression, of enterprise, of speech. The suit comes just days before this administration wants the United States to relinquish control of the Internet's domain name system. And that deadline is midnight, October 1st. Congress failed to delay the transfer, so now Arizona, Nevada, Oklahoma, and the state of Texas have stepped up to stop the move and to stop President Obama. Of course, states have often found themselves in this administration forced to take matters into their own hands because this administration has acted so often well beyond its constitutional powers and has failed to enforce federal laws as well, including, of course, immigration laws. The state of Texas has filed more than 40 lawsuits against the Obama administration, including in 2014 when 26 states sued the president over his executive fiat to unilaterally keep illegal immigrants from being deported. The Supreme Court earlier this year deadlocked, and that left in place a lower court ruling against the administration that blocked Obama's amnesty fiat. States also targeted the EPA, earning a victory after the Supreme Court, temporarily at least, blocked the agency's clean power regulations. In 2012, states won a case against the EPA over its excessive mercury regulations. When it comes to Obamacare, states have a mixed record, losing a challenge at the Supreme Court when the individual mandate was unexpectedly upheld, but winning on the Medicaid expansion. And it now appears Obamacare is all but a moot point. It will be decided in the marketplace, not in the courts. The number of exchanges in Obamacare has collapsed from 23 down to 6, and most of the largest insurance companies have withdrawn from Obamacare after losing billions of dollars despite federal subsidies. As to stopping a president from giving away what is not his to begin with, it's unclear whether liberal courts will side with the anti-American impulses of a lame duck president whose principal legacy has been one of confusion and indifference to traditional American interests. The Obama administration's planned transfer of oversight of the Internet, set to take effect 3 days from now. However contemptible this administration's record is on so much, the impotence and the acquiescence of our courts and our Congress throughout the past 7.5 years is every bit as disappointing. And if ever America needed new leadership, it is now. And now courts will have to muster the courage and the integrity to stop the giveaway of American responsibility and control of the Internet until at least our Congress and Senate have the opportunity to express the will of the American people as a democratic republic ought. A novel concept in these waning days of the Obama reign.
Within days, the Obama administration is set to end the arrangement under which the U.S. government oversees the organization that assigns and coordinates the Internet addresses that we all use every day. But 4 state attorneys general have filed lawsuits. They say the transition would violate the U.S. Constitution and, more importantly, perhaps make the Internet a much more dangerous place. To help us understand what this all means is cybersecurity expert and senior fellow at the Center for Digital Government, Morgan Wright. Welcome, Mr. Wright. Nice to see you, sir.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, sir.
Tell me, first of all, the organization that we're talking about that assigns these addresses and coordinates everything is called ICANN, I-C-A-N-N. What does that stand for?
Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. That's just a fancy way of saying Fox News actually translates to an IP address, a set of numbers, and they make sure when you type in foxnews.com that you go to foxnews.com.
Right, and not someplace else, right?
Yeah, and not CNN or anything like that, right?
No, we wouldn't want that. But
yeah.
All right, so this is they're doing so under contract, this organization, with the U.S. Commerce Department. That's been going on for years, right?
Yes, since about 1998.
Any problems?
Untold, I mean, ask Mark Zuckerberg, ask, the guys at Twitter and stuff. Untold wealth, great job creation. We've got an economy that works. We've got a lot of capability. It's, kind of thing, if it's not broke, why are we fixing it?
Well, now, when this transfers, it'll transfer to some other body, right? The supervision that we now have, or at least the oversight that we have as a government, will transfer to some international body. What is that?
Well, it'll still be ICANN, but what they're going to do then is open up, and they'll be think of it a UN for the internet. That's basically what it's going to be. They already have about 111 member countries. A lot of those already being UN member nations, and so they're looking
U.S.
at
being one of those countries.
U.S. being one of those countries. But it gets back. The real question is, with that many people, we've seen how effectively the UN works. Will this be effective in terms of how it manages going into the future? Will we be able to protect our interests, more importantly, our .gov, our .mil addresses, and our space in cyberspace? That's one of the 5 domains now: sea, air, land, space. Cyberspace is where we'll fight the next
But
war.
other countries will not have any more access to these addresses in order to do any mischief than we have, right?
That's unknown. I mean, that's
Really?
what's one of the great unknowns about this, is because the coordination of this right now, anytime you assign new addresses, you give out these new numbers, eventually it has to be signed off by the NTIA, by the Department of Commerce.
What's the NTIA?
National Telecommunications Industry Association. I think it's part of the Department of Commerce as well. So,
Right. So that's our government has to sign
That's our
off.
government. They say it's fine. You can sign these things up, and when they do, then they create these new addresses, and then there's what's called a top-level domain server. And so when that happens, they create a record. It's the record of authority. It is what it is. It is absolute. It's the ground truth. And that's why we can trust that when we type in a domain name, a name of something, it translates correctly and takes us to the place. But more importantly, too,
Takes
Britt,
the place we want to go.
but more importantly, for law enforcement, for national security, it means that we also have trust in those records, that when we do investigations, when we're trying to prevent things from happening, that we have trust that those numbers and names are accurate as well.
Now, there was a measure to stop this from happening.
Right.
And that failed in Congress?
Yeah. It was attached to a spending bill. It got cut out of the spending bill, so we're now 24 hours.
So we're down to the attorneys
Hail
general in their
Mary.
lawsuit.
Right. Yeah.
Where does that
4
stand?
states. As far as I know, it's under consideration. I was trying to get an update right before we came on air, but, quite frankly, one of those arguments has already been dealt with. It is they've already determined that it is not U.S. government property, so that claim, I think, is going to be weak. The question is, from a national security standpoint, have we done enough to protect ourselves before we transfer ownership of this away from the U.S.
And I take
government?
it that once it's gone, it's gone.
There is no putting the toothpaste back in the tube on this one. When it's out the door come October 1st, it is a brave new world, and we have no idea. We kind of have an idea, but we don't really know where it's going to go.
Morgan Wright, thank you, sir. Nice of you to come in.